Hey, Matt here, and I wanted to give my opinion on using proxies for scraping or harvesting from the engines, primarily from Google. So, there's probably about as much misinformation on using proxies for harvesting with Scrapebox as there is good information out there. From what I see a lot of people giving information about whether you should use private proxies for scraping or public proxies for scraping and how many you should use, etc. So, in my opinion, I only use private proxies for scraping. It's been a year and a half since I've used public proxies for scraping. It's been a year and a half since I've used public proxies for anything in Scrapebox except for checking indexed, because I seem to load up massive lists and get my private proxies blocked. However, since we're talking about proxies for harvesting, and you could probably do it with indexing too, I'm just usually impatient. But when we're talking about harvesting, the way I do it is to set my connections to 20% of my proxies. So I have my proxies down here grayed out so you can't see them with the password and whatnot. But you can see I have 58 proxies, and I've tested these against Google. Now, these rules don't necessarily apply to Yahoo, Bing, and AOL because they all have their own block rules, and they vary from time to time as they change them and that sort of thing, and they seem to block me with using this method quicker actually than Google does. But since I'm primarily concerned with Google, as most people are, at least for the purpose of this video, that's what we're going to talk about. So when I go to use Google, if I want to do proxies, what I do is just use 20% method. So if we bust out our calculator, take 20% of 58. And that is 11.6. So I would either go 11 or 12 connections. So I go up here to settings, adjust maximum connections, and I go to my Google Harvester and I adjust it. And I need to turn on multi-threaded harvester. And we go to Google and I put it at like 11. Apply, and I can harvest pretty much all day. I've run over 100 million URLs straight like this just a couple weeks ago. In the early part of 2012, I have run it for 10 days straight harvesting Google and not gotten proxies blocked to the point that it stopped harvesting. Sure, you're going to get a couple of proxy blocks here and there, but they unblock typically in 24 hours or less. I can PageRank check with this method. So if I have URLs over here and I go PageRank checking, I can check several 100,000 URLs with PageRank and finish up and not have proxies blocked. Like I said, occasionally you're going to get some proxies blocked, but by and large, this method works well. Now, Google has recently really cracked down on using proxies for scraping, so this could change a little bit. You could go a little bit more conservative if you wanted to, so say 10%, so make it like 6 connections, that sort of thing. But if you stay in the 10 to 20% range, as a rule, at least for the past year and a half, I've been able to scrape endlessly with private proxies. And you can see if we put stuff in, even with just 4 keywords, it's only going to run at 4 connections because you get 1 connection per keyword. You can see that results can come in pretty fast. And so it had a few weak start there on a couple of keywords, but results come in pretty fast even on low connections. So I'm at 3 connections and getting 37 URLs a second, which is pretty fast overall. And if you want to harvest pretty much as you want, you can turn around and use the proxy method like this. You can do your own thing. You can harvest public proxies if you want, but in my personal opinion, it is much better on my time to take some proxies and run it through this way and spend a couple extra minutes for it to harvest and save the half hour that I used to spend every single day testing proxies and monkeying around with them, and then you get bad results because proxies die mid-run and everything else that goes on with those. So it's just not worth the hassle. I would rather load up my proxies, and all in all, I'd say I am able to harvest many more URLs than the people who are using public proxies on the whole, if I do split testing anyways, at least on my own run. So that's my 2 cents on using private proxies. I only use private proxies for everything. I use public proxies for nothing. I'm not saying public proxies are bad, but they're just not worth my time, and it's so much higher success rate and so much statistically less time that I spend with it that I actually come out ahead in the end. So there you have it. That's my opinion on using private versus public proxies for anything and everything in Scrapebox.